Hi everyone, so today I'll do a comparison video between these two electric scooter, the iSinwheel S9 Max and the Hiboy KS4 Pro electric scooters. So let's get started. So first of all, these two scooters is kind of similar in many ways, and also the price is also kind of similar. So that's why I compare these two scooters in this video. I bought these two scooters with my own money, so they're not sponsored. So just a disclaimer, this is a very honest and unbiased review. So first of all, these two scooters, I mean, from this angle, it looks kind of similar already. They are both between budget and mid-range scooters. The iSinwheel on the left, I mean, I have reviewed both of these scooters already in my previous video, so you can check them out. The iSinwheel, it retails for around $500, and the KS4 Pro retails for around $600 to $700. So the Hiboy is more closer to mid-range, and the iSinwheel is closer to budget. However, they are around $100 to $150 difference, so it's still kind of close in my opinion. And then the dimension, as you can see from here, they're very similar. However, the iSinwheel is actually smaller. It's about an inch shorter in both length and the height. And in terms of the weight, the Hiboy is also heavier. It's a lot heavier actually. The Hiboy is around 38 pounds, and the iSinwheel is around 33 pounds. So the iSinwheel is very light. It actually feels like a kid scooter. The Hiboy feels actually more like an adult regular scooter. So FYI, if you're a small person, you probably like the iSinwheel more, and if you prefer portable, Hiboy better for regular adults. And then for the speed, actually, top speed, iSinwheel is rated at 21 to 22 miles per hour as advertised. The Hiboy is advertised as 19 miles per hour, and it actually easily reaches 19 miles per hour, sometimes even 20 according to his speedometer. The iSinwheel, as I reported from my previous review video, it cannot reach as advertised 21 or 22 miles per hour, not even close. So just keep that in mind. Is some kind of false advertisement. It only reaches around 16 to 17 miles per hour on flat surface, even after fully charged, and on completely smooth and flat surfaces. And I'm not overweight. I'm under 130 pounds, so kind of disappointing. They should have advertised this as 17 miles per hour. The very highest I ever achieved is 18, but not all the time. This one 19 easily. And then for the range, Hiboy is rated at 25 miles, and the iSinwheel is rated at 22 miles. In real world, Hiboy actually reaches around 20 to 22 miles, which is excellent, very close to his 25-mile claimed range. However, the iSinwheel is a lot more disappointing. It only reaches around 14 to 15 miles, and if you're heavier, it's going to be lower as well, so around half of his claimed mileage. And for the battery size, actually both of these scooters are both 36 volts. The Hiboy has a 11.6 mAh battery. The iSinwheel has 10.4, I believe, mAh battery. So the battery is bigger on the Hiboy, and of course longer range. It has a 417 watt hour battery. The iSinwheel is around 374 watt hour. And then both of these scooters are front wheel drive, front motor, both rated at 500 watts. However, I think the iSinwheel is not 500 watts. Again, slower, and the acceleration is much weaker. Also, the hill climbing is a lot worse than the Hiboy. Hiboy's, I mean, is more closer to 500, I guess. So acceleration is better, even though both of them are not that quick, because they're not expensive scooters anyway. And hill climbing a lot better than on the Hiboy. It climbs around a 10% grade at 9 to 10 miles per hour. On the iSinwheel, it only reaches 5 miles per hour on the same hill. So keep that in mind. And then both have 10-inch solid tires. However, the Hiboy is closer to 9.5-inch, and the iSinwheel is actually closer to 9 inches. So both of them are falsely claimed or advertised for the wheel size. However, the Hiboy is close enough, 9.5. This one is 9. I don't know why they claim it as 10. And then the width of the tire is also different. This one is very, very narrow. It's around 2 inches or maybe even 1.9 inches in width. So very narrow and not that stable. If you take a corner too quick, just be careful. And then on the Hiboy, it's around 2.2 inches in width, so it's wider, 10% wider than the iSinwheel. And they're both solid. The Hiboy has a honeycomb style, however, it's a fake honeycomb. It's just a pattern. The iSinwheel actually has a honeycomb, more realistic honeycomb, although it's not full honeycomb anyway. It doesn't go through all the way. Some scooters have completely go through hollow solid tires. This one has the green accent. This one doesn't have any accent. It's just black. So both of these scooters are black in color, but I think in terms of looks, I actually think the iSinwheel looks better because of the green accent. But that's just a personal taste. And then in terms of brakes, they are again the same. Front electronic braking and rear disc brake. The disc brake is slightly bigger on the Hiboy. It's around 4.5 to 5 inches disc, and the iSinwheel is only 4 inches. So everything feels small on the iSinwheel. Again, looks like a kid's scooter. And then the electronic braking is also stronger on the Hiboy compared to the iSinwheel. Not even sure if it has regenerative braking because it doesn't show on the screen. The Hiboy actually shows on the screen that it has regenerative braking. And then in terms of the wire, there's a lot of wires on the Hiboy. Here and there, there's like 3 wires already. Here is just, I think it's also 3. However, they have the harness over here, so more protection on the iSinwheel. And the next thing is suspension. The Hiboy only has a rear suspension, no front suspension, and the suspension is extremely stiff on the Hiboy. I cannot even feel it. Pretty much useless. The suspension on the iSinwheel is much better. This one actually has full suspension, front and rear. So in that regard, the iSinwheel is actually better. The rear suspension, I can actually feel it, is very smooth. And also the front suspension, but this front suspension actually is not as good as the rear for some reason. So when I jump on it, the rear is much better than the front. But it's better to, it's still good to have the front one. So iSinwheel wins in this regard. It's more comfortable, and also both of these scooters have seat option. Again, you have to pay extra for that. The seat on the Hiboy actually costs around between $50 to $100, depends on when you buy it. Actually, I changed the seat top of this Hiboy because the original one is very hard. And it doesn't have a suspension on the seat pole, so one of the worst seat ever offered is from Hiboy, in my opinion. The iSinwheel has a much better seat. Again, one of the best seat I ever sat on a scooter. Interestingly, even though this is a cheap scooter, it has suspension on the seat post, and the top is a lot more comfortable than the Hiboy, and this is the original one. And this is the attachment over here. Of course, is different from the Hiboy. The Hiboy is a lot simpler in terms of installation. And then both of these batteries are located under the deck, so it's pretty big. I mean, pretty hard, thick deck because of the battery. Both have a kickstand. The ground clearance is taller on the iSinwheel, as you can clearly see that the kickstand is longer on the iSinwheel. In terms again of the ground clearance, the Hiboy is around 3 inches. iSinwheel is between 3 maybe to 4 inches or 3.5. As you can see, there's an incline on the deck. It's not level. It's tilted towards the front. The Hiboy is completely level. The reason for that is because of the front suspension on the iSinwheel. It's kind of like an afterthought. They added, at the end of the design. I don't know, probably they used the first generation frame. That's why it's tilted, because of the the added suspension in the front. And then in terms of the fender, both are very nice, but the rear fender is better on the Hiboy. It's a lot more sturdy, it's more tough, and there's reinforcement both on the left and the right. However, on the iSinwheel, there's only one reinforcement on the right side, not on the left side, and it kind of feel like filmy plastic. And then next thing, the folding mechanism, it's very similar for both scooters. It's actually almost identical. However, the connection is different. On the iSinwheel is a hook over here, and on the Hiboy, it looks like that. Again, very similar. They just reverse the location. So in this case, the Hiboy has the hook right over here, and this one can also act as a grocery bag holder, which is a plus. The iSinwheel doesn't have that hook over here. It just used this regular connection, which is used in like 95% of the scooter in this class. And then both of these has thumb throttle. The grip is actually better on the iSinwheel, but that's a personal choice. And the handlebar is wider on the Hiboy, is around 19 inches in width. The iSinwheel is 17 inches, so kind of narrow. But because the screen is narrower, that's the reason. And then the control is very similar as well. Both have a belt, regular bicycle belt, although it's slightly different. The mirror, of course, is aftermarket. You have to buy it yourself. Both have a brake lever over here that controls both the electronic braking and the disc brake. But the iSinwheel also have a separate electronic brake throttle. I mean, not the throttle, the electronic brake control over here. You can just use the electronic brake on the iSinwheel. However, the electronic braking is very, very weak, so you don't want to use this all the time, especially in emergency situation. The Hiboy doesn't have that, so you can only use the brake lever, which controls both the electronic braking and the disc brake anyway. And then for the deck with the Hiboy, both are very narrow. However, the Hiboy is slightly wider at 6 inches. The iSinwheel is extremely narrow at 5.5 inches. So one of the narrowest deck on the market. And then in terms of the stem, both are also very thin. However, the iSinwheel is even thinner than the stem on the Hiboy. Again, everything feels small for the iSinwheel. Even though this is the max version, which is the top of the line, they have the regular S9 and the S9 Pro. This is the max, but still everything feels small. And then the KS4, there's two versions, the regular KS4 and the KS4 Pro. This is a Pro version, so slightly bigger than the KS4. And then both has headlight and rear light, just like most scooter. However, the headlight on the iSinwheel is under here, is right, you know, I prefer it on top, but this is at the bottom. But it's pretty bright. And then the Hiboy is of course on top, which I prefer. Both have rear lights and brake light, and both will flash when you press the brake. But the Hiboy has the ambient lighting, which is red in color. The iSinwheel doesn't have any ambient lighting. And then the charging port is right here for the iSinwheel, is on the left side. Which is kind of good. You know, usually I park it like this and the wall is over here, so I can easily find the charging port. The Hiboy is actually on the right side on the tube over here. So as you can see, the red thing, that's the charging port. I prefer it on the left side, but most scooters on the right side for some reason. And then so that's pretty much it for the comparison. I mean, the seat, of course, again, the iSinwheel is much better. And then which one do I recommend? So conclusion, if you ask me, I would definitely recommend the Hiboy. It's definitely worth the extra $100 to $150, because everything is bigger, feels more solid and more adult-like, and higher top speed, more range. Especially if you don't care about the seat, that, you know, I think most people don't care about the seat, then definitely the Hiboy. And then the iSinwheel is not bad, it's just false advertisement on the top speed and the range. Especially the top speed is a big difference. I don't know why they advertise it as 21, 22. Maybe they just want to attract people, even though it's cheaper than the Hiboy. But you know, it's only 16 to 17 miles per hour. This one is 19 to 20. The range also more on the Hiboy. And everything feels small and light on the iSinwheel, and the good thing, it has a full suspension, not on the Hiboy. But in general, overall, after everything, look at everything, I would recommend the Hiboy. You know, I'm not saying the iSinwheel is bad. If you don't mind 16 to 17 miles per hour and you prefer the cheaper price at around $400 to $500, then this is also a good pick. So anyway, feel free to leave any comments or question. I just prefer the Hiboy, more solid, slightly bigger, heavier, more range, and probably, you know, Hiboy is a slightly more well-known company than iSinwheel, probably better support. So, and definitely more, the build quality is better on the Hiboy as well. So anyway, this is my quick comparison video between these two electric scooters. So thanks for watching and have a nice day.